Good morning, everybody. Let's see if I can see everybody. Liz, you want to maybe scoot just a little bit toward your sweet daughter? There we go.
I'm kind of dangerous, you know.
Are you dangerous? We may have... George, you're hidden behind Dennis.
I like it that way.
Yeah, but I have to go all the way over here to see if you've got mischief on your face. Or you can move that way.
You don't have to worry about it.
You always have mischief on your face.
You'll know when that's mischief.
Oh, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's good to see y'all. We may have Jean Blizzard teaches, a Sunday school class, and they're out of town up in their place in the Pennsylvania mountains.
Yeah, they knew they were getting snow, Thomas.
Yeah.
Right off up there. They're crazy.
Oh, there's snow up there.
I bet there's snow up there.
When will she be teaching?
Well, she's been teaching on Sundays, but but she won't be, so she sent an email out to her members in her class and told them, hey, there's several other adult classes. So we may have somebody drop in from Jean's class. So I have to tell you, Fred, as Sunday school director, hates the idea that people will cancel a class. You shouldn't just say, I'm not going to be here. Somebody else take over, send them to another class. But so I appreciated that she forewarned her class and said, you can go to these classes. So anyway,
And if
so
it's just one person that shows up, that's the person that they're to hear that has to be heard.
right. Right. I have taught before. The smallest group I've ever taught at one time was 2 people, but it was still teaching 2 people. Hi, come in. Are you from Jean's class?
Yes.
We were just talking about y'all.
Oh, yeah.
And saying we may have some folks come in. And your name is?
Brittany.
Brittany. Hi, Brittany.
Hi.
This is a warm and friendly group. We're glad we have you. So as we're gonna open with prayer in just a minute.
Hey,
Hey,
come in and join us.
come in and join us. Absolutely. Lost my train of thought. We have a praise for Liz because last weekend Liz fell, and she said she painted the house red with the blood that came from it. So it was kind of huh? Well, I did. We were texting back and forth, and they said you had quite a fall.
Yeah, we thought we were walking a crime scene.
A good. So the thankfulness for it's a wonder that you didn't break something, as bad a fall as that was. But they glued the skin back together. And the amazing thing she was just telling me about it was a number of years ago she had some surgery or something. Okay, and so it was that over the years her movement of that arm had been incredibly limited, and after the fall that she had, she's got more movement in the arm now. So
There was a reason for that fall.
And one more prayer request I want to mention. Tim Birdsell, some of y'all may know Tim. He's always out there greeting. His wife is very, very sick with liver issue. And she's on the transplant list. And evidently not very far toward the top on it. So please, pray for him and his wife and that.
His wife's name is Liz.
No. Stacy.
Stacy.
He used to be a greeter.
He still is. Yeah, there in the lobby, you will
He's not the
see.
one that was out here.
No, he's down in the main lobby.
He's the one that, he hands out bulletins.
Hands up, and he has a knife, and his wife is. She's not in her 60s, that's for sure.
Yeah. they got-
So let's be praying that he told Fred that this morning when she went on the list, and so Kendall, how about opening us with prayer, if you wouldn't mind?
Dear Father in heaven, thank you for this opportunity to study your word and to come together with other Christians that you've so diligently fed and kept moving in your ways over all these years. Please be with those that we've talked about this morning for quick recovery and for a liver transplant and for a pacemaker surgery planned and all the other things that people haven't spoken about, but they need your care and attention. Thank you for being with us in our challenges in life and in our triumphs. You're an awesome Father. In Christ's name, amen.
Kendall, would you mind walking over there and turning that thing off?
No problem.
It has got such a loud sound to it, and I'm it's
Yeah,
getting
it's
warm in
hot.
here, and then it's going to pick up as we live stream. So I think all they're going to hear is, I don't know where the switch is. You can just unplug it if you want. Okay, we're in.
There you go.
There we go. Now that's better because I can hear y'all a lot better.
Universal off-on switch.
Is unplug the thing.
Yep. Our engineer couldn't find the on off. Look at that, yeah, why?
We
We haven't
still
turned back on now.
we still love our engineer
Oh, yeah.
right there. You know, when we look at this group of people, as far as careers that y'all have had and some still having and working, we've got a real interesting group of people with what we've all done with our life or still doing with our life, and I think that adds to the richness of what we bring. Because see, we were able to tease Kendall about being an engineer and figuring out how to turn it off.
You pull it out of the
Just pull it
of
out.
the plug and it stops.
Marshall says the universal on-off switch.
It's on a button on it.
So, here we go. Let's look at this picture. I put a living room of the 1970s. Did your home have one? So did anybody either live in a house that the living room furniture was just like that, along with the artificial flower arrangement that you see on that table right near underneath the lamp? So, huh?
Pretty much.
If you lived,
Different colors.
if you lived in a living room, or your house had a living room, or somebody's house had a living room that looked like that, would you raise your hand? Yeah.
We still do?
My mom's still got that chair in the front and that couch in the back, but she's recovered it 3 times, and I have that lamp on my nightstand right now.
I always like the carpets.
Yeah, the carpet's really.
Oh, the shag. Remember shag carpeting?
yeah.
Oh. Now, let me ask you.
Man, when a kid gets sick in shag carpet.
Oh, yeah, you can't get it all out.
No.
Ever. Or the dog, or the cat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Can't
Yeah,
get
you can't get it out. Fred grew up in his grandmother owned this really big farm, dairy farm, and so his grandfather and his parents, and he lived in another house on the farm. Well, his grandfather passed away suddenly when Fred was 2 years old, and so Mama Bolt was her name. Mama Bolt said she could not live in the big farmhouse by herself. Anyway, they were not far apart on the same parcel of land. But anyway, so they all had to move to the big house. And in the big house, there was a living room, all kind of formal like that. Do you have any idea when they used that living room?
They had adult company.
One time a year.
Oh, for how?
Christmas.
Christmas.
Okay.
Once a year, because the house had 18-foot ceilings, And so they would bring a great big tree in. Everybody would come back. But they would use it one time a year. Now, in my mama and daddy's house, we used it 0 times a year. Never used it. But you would put the Christmas tree up in front of the big window. And does anybody else remember the silver Christmas trees?
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
and you had the reflector lamp thing, and it would
Colin
rotate.
Blake.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah. So we all would pretty much agree those set aside rooms in the 70s and 80s, you never used them, or you maybe used them once or twice a year. When you had more people than the den could accommodate. Okay. So switch that same concept over to, remember we got our Israelites, they've been away from Egypt going on their 2nd year. They're still in the desert around Mount Sinai. And God had given, last week we were looking at instructions on how the tabernacle was to be built. Now, this was the very special meeting place that God would call his people to for worship. So now, and we talked about that was a portable, I wouldn't want to be on the packing crew.
No.
I don't know how much packing time it took, but when that fire said move, that had to be packed up and moved. For 40 years, they were packing and, 39, because they didn't have it the first year. They were packing and unpacking that thing. But when the people were called to worship God, this was the center of what was going to happen when worship took place. So kind of stick that in the back of your head.
I'm having a hard time visualizing what we talked about earlier, 600,000 people around
I
that little
know.
spot.
I don't know if they did a rotating schedule of who got to come and be around it, but that's a great question. You know, visually, when there were 600,000 Israelites going through the desert, and you know, Marshall can be at times, I won't call him annoying, I'll call him very precious. Because he will come up with, not precious in the southern sarcastic precious, like he's just so precious. No, he will come up with terrific questions and will email them to me or send me. And I love doing the research to come up with answers or to come up with options of what people say. It could be this or it could be that, or sometimes say, I don't have a clue. But the number of Israelites, depending on what Bible scholar was counting, was anywhere from 600,000 to 2 million. But it did seem that more, and that was one of your questions, more leaned toward the lower end as opposed to the 2 million. But when you get to moving 600,000 people, you know, men, women, and little kids, never mind the livestock,
Right.
and packing up everything, what a monumental, unreal task that must be. And so I guess they took turns, I don't know, or the different tribes. Remember the 12 tribes of Israel? Maybe this week was tribe 1 and 2. Next week would have been a different tribe. Good question.
I love that goat in the picture. It's kind of cool to see that goat there.
That yeah, and when we talked last week, well, y'all had tuned in when we
Yeah.
streamed. Where did the gold come from? And remember, we looked how specific God said, "Build this tabernacle." Where'd they get the gold? Egypt. They brought it out of Egypt. Yeah, because they're not mining in around Mount Sinai. And those poor animals down at the bottom, you know, I don't know if they were. That looks like antelope to me. You
Yeah.
probably can't see it. Antelope was not on the list of animals to be
I was
sacrificed.
gonna say, I for the hills.
You
about
felt
it.
safe.
The antelopes were safe. The rams, you know, those
Yeah, that's it.
are not very safe. Okay, now let me just hit this because we're looking at the word atonement. Atonement is not a word that is commonly used in our vocabulary anywhere. I kind of only ever associate it with faith and Christians, but it's a huge concept in the Old Testament. So the concept of atonement is Old Testament, New Testament. We'll hit at the end how it's changed. But in other religions around the world, and I know Fred is taught on Hinduism, where they have tons of gods in Hinduism, or Buddhism, where there's not, they don't particularly say there is a God. But that idea of atonement isn't one that's out there. So, quick bullets. Okay, atonement. God's act of reconciling sinful humans back to himself. And himself I misspelled, I'm sorry. So we have sinful human, we have God. How does God pull these two together so there can be in relationship? Now, we need atonement because our sin, and think Old Testament too, places people under God's wrath. Okay? The only way to escape the penalty, and the penalty of sin is death, is a substitutionary, that's a big word, sacrifice. What does the word substitutionary mean?
Somebody else takes your place. You offer something up to take the place of your sin.
Something's got to take the place. I don't know how I ever cooked before the internet. Kind of being sarcastic, but like you're starting to cook something, and you don't have enough. Like you need self-rising flour and all, and I don't tend to have a bunch of that around. I got the plain flour, and I got to substitute plain flour for self-rising. I'm going to hit the computer to tell me, okay, how much salt, how much soda. It's substituting. There had to be somebody to substitute and take the penalty of sin. Old Testament, this was done through blood sacrifices of what kind of animals? Don't name the breed of animals. Perfect animals. Got it. So now today we're under the new covenant, and so this atonement is accomplished through the finished work of Jesus. So it's such an arching thing from Old Testament to New Testament. It's a very beautiful way of how God planned for atonement, because God knew we were going to be sinners. There are no surprises, and that is what an amazing, I don't understand it, blank work of God, that he still created us.
Yeah, I know, you think, why did you do that?
Why did you do that? I don't know if I would have created us, because they didn't get it past Adam and Eve. We couldn't just even get out of the gate when man chose. Basically, I want to do what I want to do.
Well, we're still that way.
And we're still that way. I don't know. It was Kathia, and I don't know how. Maybe she was 8 or 9 months. So no, and even 41 years ago, the baby slings. You'd stuff them down on your chest. I don't remember them being on the back then, but I was in the grocery store. She was stuffed in the thing. She was asleep, had her head to the side, and this man behind me said, "She is just the picture of sweetness and innocence." And I said, well, when she's really hungry and wants her own way, she's not very sweet or innocent. But with our toddlers, they get the word no.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they do.
And that's usually the first word.
That's
they
probably
say.
the first after
Yeah.
mama and dada.
Stop saying.
It's no.
Yeah.
And it's that same thing of the will. I want what I want. And it doesn't matter that Nana says no when Eli was a toddler and he didn't obey, and I don't come arrest me, people out there. I swatted him on his bottom, which was through his diaper and his pants. He wouldn't pick up. It was a funny story. I'll tell it really quick. He
Just
wouldn't.
hurt his feelings.
It hurt his feelings. He wouldn't. He was maybe, I don't know, 16, 18 months old, about 18, because he's walking. And it was time to pick up the toys. He was at our house. And I said, Eli, let's pick up the toys. I'll help you.
He said no.
He said no. I said, Eli, it's time to pick up the toys. Then he turned around. So his back was to me, and I think the thinking was, if I can't see Nana, She can't see me. And I said, Eli, I will ask you one more time. Let's pick up your toys. And he said, no. And I got him by the arm. I didn't yank him up and dangle him, and swatted his bottom one time, and his little face just crumpled. Just crumpled. See, there's that self-will against Nana's will. And Nana's will is going to win out. So I cuddled him, and I was saying, you must obey Nana. Now, the interesting part, about 2 minutes later, and the tear, his eyes are red and the tears hadn't dried, Thea and Josh come in. And so Josh says, Eli, what's wrong? And he had some little shorthand, didn't pick up toys. Nana spanked me. And I thought, what is my sweet son-in-law going to say that, he's not hadn't been parents long. So he scooped him up and said, you must always obey your Nana. And I thought, there is a man who gets it.
Yep.
Did I ever have to spank him again with a swat on the bottom? There were a few times. The
second 2-year-olds are,
Huh?
2-year-olds are the ones that really.
2-year-olds.
Yeah.
Just,
My dad used to just swat me in the head.
Eli was running down. I was teaching Awana. We were taking him to activities, and he would have been in the 2nd grade at that time. And the kids were supposed to stand in line, and he pulls out a line and moves past me, and I just thumped him on the top of the head. And he turned around. I said, get back in line. And there was this woman there looking horrified because I guess she thought, I'm going to swat other people on top of the head, children. I said, no, he's mine, so I can do that. So real quick, I want us to get the idea of what was the responsibility of the high priest for Israel. And it was a lot more than what we would think. So the high priest had to tell the difference between holy and common, clean or unclean. What would be one of the things he would judge to determine if it was perfect? Animal sacrifice that people would bring. So the priest would be involved in determining that. The priests were supposed to teach the people of God's purpose for Israel. Now, we've talked about that over the years. What was when God pulled out Israel as his special people? What did he say the purpose for Israel was?
To be different so that the rest of the world can see what you represent.
Exactly. To be a light to the rest of the world, because remember, Israel worshipped one God, monotheism, one theism God, and that was not common in that world. Even today, monotheism is not common. Okay, so and I'm getting these things out of the book of Leviticus. They made judgments on physical circumstances. They had to say, how many days since you had a baby? Yes, you can be out with people and bring a sacrifice. And the reason, if you were willing to do the sacrificing to be ritually pure, then it should lead to being pure in your heart. They had to obey God's rule to carry out the Day of Atonement. We're going to look at what God said. This is what you do on the Day of Atonement. Jews still celebrate the Day of Atonement today, but what is it called?
Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur, exactly. So when you're next fall, when you may hear people talking about it, you may see it on a calendar, think Day of Atonement. And that was established in the 2nd year of when Moses were leading the Israelites in the desert. Now, I don't know which BC that was, but think about how long that has been carried out. And even when God told Moses, how often do you do it in the Old Testament, in Leviticus, it was one time a year. And he even said the right month of this. So it hasn't changed.
Is confession considered, I guess that's atonement in the Catholic religion?
Not the confession. because that's an act of what you're saying. They would say that Jesus still in that faith would be the act of atonement, his death.
If the Israelites now they don't sacrifice.
They can't.
Because there's not a temple.
Temple.
There's
Right,
just
right.
You're exactly right. They don't sacrifice today. They spend the day in synagogue, and there's some other things we'll talk about with that. Now, the priests were held to a higher standard than the people. They were not more righteous, but they had to carry out the commands of God. So when we looked at some of those Old Testament books and God was sending judgment on the part of the land because of the sins of the high priest, what they were doing had become a ritual but had not led to the purity in heart. Now, here we go. This is the beginning of Yom Kippur. Somebody want to read the white for me?
The Lord spoke to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron who died when they approached the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell your brother Aaron that he is not to come whenever he chooses into the most holy place behind the curtain in front of the atonement cover on the ark, or else he will die. For I will appear in the cloud over the atonement cover."
Okay, so little points in there. Remember, this is the beginning of the second year when they were in the desert. So they're still around in the, we would call it the Sinai Peninsula. If you look at the map, and over there, on that map all the way over there, the route of the Exodus, the one that's got the middle funny shaped big piece of land, that would be called the Sinai Desert. So if you got some time after class, if you want to go over and see the route that they took, that should have taken about 18 months instead of 40 years. But there you go. Sin will do it every time. Now, last week we talked about Aaron's two sons that God struck them dead.
Nadab and Abihu.
What? Yes, those two. What did they do that God struck them dead for?
Unholy sacrifice.
Unholy sacrifice. And what was the two sons' state of mind?
They have been drinking.
They had been drinking. And then after that, that's why we said God gave a command that you may not be drinking when you're coming in to make that sacrifice. It's interesting. This is the only place in Leviticus where it identifies that Moses and Aaron are brothers. That's just a... Now, in Exodus, it is, but in the book of Leviticus, only place. Now, Aaron has got a restriction on what he can do. Says not to come whenever you want. Why? Why did...
One time a year.
One time a year. Why would maybe he think I should come every month?
Every time I realize I've sinned.
Every time I realized I've sinned. Sacrifice like this is in the high, referred to in the high holy of days. This is the most significant thing that is done in their faith because it deals with sin. How many? I grew up and there was a song we sang at the end of every service at my little small church I attended. Anybody have a clue what song you sang at the end of the service?
Just as I am.
What?
Blessed be.
No, that was Lord's Supper. Blessed be the tie that binds.
Lord bless you and keep.
No, that was too modern.
I know how great thou art is one of
No.
them. Okay.
Praise God from whom
Oh, that's yeah.
blessings
Yeah.
flow. That one,
Yeah.
the doxology.
Yeah, we would sing it after offering in our...
You would sing it after. You sing it every week, and it's a beautiful. Words are really good, but it just becomes okay.
Yeah.
It
As
just
soon as
becomes
we
work.
sing the doxology, we get to go. Was pretty much.
Doesn't mean anything anymore.
It's lost its meaning because it happens all the time. Okay, now he can't go behind the blank
The curtain.
except for the one time a year.
Day of Atonement.
The Day of Atonement. I look to see, they say I don't know how they calculated it, but it seemed to be the different places I looked. It was about 30 feet long and 30 feet high. And the material was a very thick material. Okay? So you can't go behind the curtain. But when Jesus died on the cross, what happened in the temple?
Veil was torn.
The veil, which was this curtain, was torn
From top to bottom.
from top to bottom. Usually you tear
From bottom up. But when God did it, he did it from top to
from
bottom.
top to bottom. So, do we say that there are anything's holy in our culture?
All the believers.
Okay? Or there's, and especially if they live like it.
Well, but holy just means separated.
Holy,
You're
that's a
separated
good
to
point.
God.
Anything else we say is holy.
The Bible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they named it that, didn't they? When y'all were growing up and going into a church, what were some behaviors that you couldn't do inside the church? And you were a kid. You did them anyway.
You can run around.
Remember I
You
told
couldn't run.
Remember I told you my dad used to smack me in the head?
Okay. Yeah, you couldn't run around.
Dad used to put his arm.
You had to be quiet.
Yeah, you had to sit still.
You had to sit still because you're in the, and Lord mercy, you better take him to the bathroom because there was no getting up. You know, it was very, very strict. And the reason I would always be told that, Tracy, sit still, was because this is holy. This is in the sanctuary. And we couldn't, if a musician came to the church and did a concert and they had records to sell, you couldn't do it in the, like, what's typical, in a vestibule. You couldn't set it up in the vestibule, which is the area you walk in, because that's right beside the sanctuary. So that holiness from the sanctuary kind of bleeds over into the vestibule. But you could go to the fellowship hall and sell your records. That was interesting, but it was setting aside that sanctuary, and you never brought, well, you didn't bring things to drink out of to the church anyway. That just,
Didn't happen.
but the deacons between Sunday school and preaching would go out to the back steps of the church, and you know what they would do out there?
Drink coffee.
A burnt offering. Yes. Yeah, they would. That was before, I guess, everybody knew that very dangerous. Okay, so we've talked about this because this was central to their faith. I wanted just to point out the very top where their cherubim are touching wings. That's called in the scripture we're going to read either mercy seat. A better cover, a better translation is the atonement cover. Okay? So when we read something in the verses a little bit down and you hear the word atonement cover, that kind of whole lid came off. And as we said in the side there were the 10 Commandments, Aaron's staff, and one more thing,
The manna.
some manna. Isn't it amazing if you remember when they were going through the desert and God fed them and manna was one of the things? How much could they collect each day?
Enough one day.
Just for the day.
Just for the day,
Except for the day before the Sabbath.
the Sabbath. What would happen if they thought their appetite was going to be really big, and they ate it all and had some left over?
It would rot.
It would rot. The manna in there
Doesn't rot.
didn't rot. Okay. So he's going to lay it out extensively. Okay, and we're not just Kendall. If you'd read that, try to visualize it. We're not going to take apart the symbolism or anything.
This is how Aaron is to enter the most holy place. He must first bring a young bull for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. He is to put on the sacred linen tunic with linen undergarments next to his body. He is to tie the linen sash around him and put it on the linen turban. These are sacred garments, so he must bathe himself with water before he puts them on. From the Israelite community, he is to take 2 male goats for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering.
Okay. Now, that first offering, because it could sound confusing, is sin offering, bull and a ram. That was going to be for Aaron and his sons to sacrifice for their sin before he could lead the people in forgiveness for the people's sin. So that's why you got a couple of different amounts in there that could sound confusing. So he described how they had to dress. Okay, now that's how Aaron would dress as high priest going to make that sacrifice. Okay, now, you know, the turban, the sash, all that. Now look at this picture. And I couldn't find a really good one, but the high priest at other times, and we went through that in Exodus, he had a gold plate. I'm going to go down that side first. His head, 2 onyx stones, which there was another that really referred to a different kind of stone. On his breastplate, the 12 stones with the names of Israel. Down at the bottom, bells and pomegranates. Robe had to be blue, the ephod, the sash, the breastpiece, the tunic, and the turban. Now compare the fanciness of that. That's what he would dressed in. He had a different mode of dress when he was going into the Holy of Holies. Why did he dress? Why did God say, you dress like this instead of dressing like that?
Humility.
Say that again. You're exact.
Humility.
Humility. I am coming before the Most High God, making a sacrifice for the sins of myself and the sins of people. I don't come in looking like I'm in my Easter finery. You know? I come in like that. Y'all are sharp today. Good job. Okay, now, Kendall, would you read that verse?
Aaron is to offer the bull for his own sin offering to make atonement for himself and his household.
Why did Aaron have to take care of his sins? No, he didn't forgive his sins, but he had to go through the ritual to get his sins taken care of first.
He was the high priest.
He couldn't enter the Holy of Holies with sin.
Right.
It had to cover him.
He had to do something. God said, you got to deal with your sin first before you deal with the sin of the people.
And if you don't, you're dead.
Yeah, if you don't, you're dead. Yeah.
That's right. No, you did.
That's kind of that's sort of the bottom line.
That's it.
You know, you pay your taxes. If you don't and they catch you,
Then you're gonna pay.
Well, no, you don't have to pay your taxes. You can sit in jail.
you can sit in jail. You can pay a very large fine. Now, this word of scapegoat. I'm gonna let me get my drink over here. Kendall, and the question is, what is it? Kendall, do that.
Then he has to take the 2 goats and present them before the Lord at the entrance to the tent of meeting.
What's the tent of meeting? Another word for that.
The Holy of Holies.
The tabernacle.
The whole tabernacle, that great big tent thing. Okay?
He is to cast lots for the 2 goats. 1 lot for the Lord and the other for the scapegoat.
Okay, what's it mean to, I keep interrupting you, but that's okay.
Okay.
That's okay. I knew you'd say that. Okay, lots. What's casting lots?
It's like a dice.
It's like a dice, and they would assume that God would decide, God would control the dice, so to
And there's a
speak.
specific set of dice that are specified elsewhere.
It is. It's not just what came out of the game Risk, that very casual type. Okay, Kendall.
But the goat chosen by Lot as a scapegoat, started too far in. Aaron shall bring the goat whose lot falls to the Lord and sacrifice it for a sin offering. But the goat chosen by Lot as the scapegoat shall be presented alive before the Lord to be used for making atonement by sending it into the wilderness as a scapegoat.
Yeah. So this, what is this? And the goat probably prayed, "I want to be the scapegoat." What is what in our language today? What exactly does a scapegoat?
Substitute.
And somebody can be a scapegoat and not be guilty.
Yeah, scapegoat's typically innocent
An
substitute.
innocent person who's going to take the fall for whatever somebody else did wrong. You've seen them in, somebody may be involved with the project, but they're really not any really overseeing it, and something really bad goes wrong. It's not always the chief in charge of it. Somebody's got to take the fall.
The chief in charge blames somebody.
Yeah, the
else.
chief in charge identifies a scapegoat,
Right.
and the
Yep.
punishment is usually termination.
What do
Okay.
they do with the bodies after they kill them?
Of the animal. Sometimes some of the offerings, only a portion was sacrificed and burned there, and the others parts would be given to the priest, because the priest had no way to make money to provide for their family.
So they ate it.
They ate it. Think of a barbecue.
There's several different kinds of.
Yeah, there's
of-
several
of-
different
Of
kinds.
sacrifices, and one kind, they burn it all up, and other parts, they burn part of it up and.
It's
and
very.
pass it out to the priest or pass it out to the people who brought it. So some of it got eaten.
And remember last week we talked, there was the grain offering, the sin offering, and the burnt offering. And the one I really thought was interesting was the
Wave.
wave offering, which I never knew there was one.
There's fellowship hall.
And there was the fellowship offering. We didn't even get in we mentioned that one last week. Okay, Kendall?
This is to be a lasting ordinance for you. On the 10th day of the 7th month, you must deny yourselves and not do any work, whether native born or a foreigner residing among you, because on this day atonement will be made for you to cleanse you. Then before the Lord you will be clean from all your sins.
Why is Yom Kippur today not on the same date every year? It's like sometimes September, October.
Well, it's on the same date, it's just a different calendaring system.
Right. They were using the Jewish calendar. We use the Gregorian calendar. So January 2nd is always going to fall on January 2nd. So if you're working with your coworkers or someone who's Jewish, we enjoyed at the university when Yom Kippur came, unless it came on a weekend, because it didn't give us the day off. We liked, and we had a nice significant number of Jewish faculty and staff, so they could not, that was a religious holiday. They didn't come to campus even during the week on that. So 10th day of the 7th month. I didn't look up what it will fall on 2025. Bill, you got your computer with you right there.
Okay.
Look at when Yom Kippur will be for 2025. I'm sorry, I should have looked that up. And when he can give us the date. And everybody in your household were required, even if you were a foreigner, which meant a Gentile, you could have no religion, you still celebrated, or I don't mean celebrated in the thing of joy, because this was not a joyous festival. This was an occasion that dealt with the sins of the people. But everybody has to. Do we have a date for this fall?
October
Oh,
2nd.
second.
October 2nd.
Yeah.
So a little bit later than the times it has been in September.
We have Easter at different times. You know,
And do you know the
I
formula?
never have understood that.
I can tell you why. Because it's related to when the Jewish faith calculates when Passover would be.
Because of the
Uh-huh.
Christ, the death, and the resurrection.
And it's based on the Passover date each year. Things we learn.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's why.
Much later this year.
Pardon?
Easter is a lot later this year.
It's a late Easter this. Is it what, 1st of April?
No, the 20th of April.
Oh, wow, that is late.
Wow,
What is it?
20th of
Wow.
April.
20th?
That's
the day
very.
before my birthday.
That
A
is
very.
California.
That is a very late Easter. Now, just as a little bit of more background on Yom Kippur, because I've certainly at the university I worked with Jewish people, and like one of my staff members, she would tell me a lot about how. So they would go. Well, I'll tell you where they go in just a minute. So another word for atonement is repentance. It's the 10th day, there we go, of the month of Tishrei in the Hebrew calendar, which usually falls between mid-September, mid-October, and the Gregorian calendar. That's what we're on. Yom Kippur fast day is the holiest day of the year for Jewish people, when they are closest to God and to the essence of our souls. Yom Kippur, and this is a quote from a Jewish source, Yom Kippur means Day of Atonement, as the verse states, for on this day he will forgive you to purify you, that you be cleansed from all your sins before God. So how it's celebrated in different ways depending on if it's a Jewish family or conservative or Orthodox, more to the Reformed side. But for 26 hours, we afflict our souls, okay? We abstain from food and drink, do not wash or apply lotions or creams, do not wear leather footwear, and abstain from marital relations. Instead, we spend the day in synagogue praying for forgiveness. So that is how that particular Yom Kippur is celebrated on that day.
But that's for nowadays, since there's been no temple. Because if there was a temple, they would have to
There
go
would
and
have been
sacrifice.
there would have been sacrifices, yeah.
So basically, what they're doing now doesn't forgive their sins. Only Jesus can.
Right, but I think they view it as a way to atone for their sins. Okay. Now, when we look at this from a Christian perspective, how do we get forgiveness for our sins? And I think our picture, truly, the cross is the bridge between us, our sin, and God. And I want to play this. How's my time? Oh, gee, we're gonna get maybe done a little early today. This is called The Great Divide. It points. It's a song by Point of Grace, and it captures. And I hope.
We want to do a song for you now.
I can't ever to get it. Let's see where's. That's as loud as it goes. I'll turn my monitor around. If it's to, so the sound can come out. I put this in as a video link, and it's not playing through the TV, I'm afraid.
All that we have probably been singing for almost all of those 25 years that we have been together, and it's really, it never gets old.
It gets
It's just
louder in a
beautiful
minute.
Picture of what Jesus did for us on the cross when he bridged the great divide between us and God.
I'm
So
sorry.
that we can not only have a relationship with him here, but spend eternity with him. This song is called The Great Divide.
The lyrics will appear. And if you know it, sing along.
Trying to fathom the distance, looking across the canyon, carved by my hands. God is gracious, sin would still separate us. Were it not for the bridge, His grace has made.
Think of that picture I showed you.
Love will carry me. There's a bridge to cross the great divide. A way was made to reach the other side. The mercy of the Father cost His Son's life. His blood
Wasn't that a good song? By Point of Grace, and you can find 47 different arrangements of it. But I want to play. I'm just going to test this. I pulled it up a different way. I want to see if it will play. Nope. Sorry.
You want to play it through the TV?
Yeah.
You go down to the bottom and you type audio, and then you pick
Okay.
the TV.
Where do I go?
You don't do it on that screen, you do it on your windows down the very bottom. That little white box
Right.
next to the window. See the white box next to the window where it says,
Down further.
down further.
It's like where you search.
The very bottom row.
Oh, over here. Kendall, just come on up. You
Well,
get to be
let
on.
me- well,
You
let me
get
show
to be
you.
on TV.
Look, see this white box right here? Where
Oh,
it says
right here,
search?
the search box.
Okay, type audio in there.
Okay.
Okay, and then pick, let's see, audio switch. No, that's HP audio switch. I'm not sure. Pick that. Let's see what that says. Everybody's a little bit different. What did pop up? No, I didn't do it either. All right.
So if I play,
Next pick, try this. Do Bluetooth.
where's my search box?
Go back here in the search box again down the
Oh.
bottom.
I know. Where?
Well, you just erased it.
Oh, right down
There it is,
here.
right there.
Sorry, Bluetooth.
Tap Bluetooth, because that usually pulls up. There you go. Bluetooth and other device settings. Click that. There you go. Now it says audio. Generic monitor, so click that.
Okay.
Right here where it says generic monitor.
Yeah.
Let's see. And click over there. No, that's remove device. Okay, I run out.
Okay.
It looks like it's got that set up as the audio. I don't know why it's not showing it.
Thank you for trying.
I tried.
You did.
Your computer don't work quite like mine.
That's okay, you were engineered enough to shut that noise
I was
off.
able to unplug something, so
Plug it.
I'm one for one today.
I hope if you love the song, the words were just perfect for what we looked at today. The music itself is just beautiful. So go to YouTube and you type in The Great Divide, Point of Grace, and you'll see it come up. So I'm going right now to say goodbye to the people out watching remotely today. We were glad to have you.